things and talking about whether it's TV news or anything, and in this case, my Catholic faith. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for the hospitality. Like Frank said, I had done a story with him and Carolina Catholic professionals last fall regarding the St. John Cemetery project. And despite you see on TV every night and things that you might read or you hear about, at least at Fox, and I work out of the Channel 4 building, so it's ABC4, we really do try to do more positive stories in the community. I know when you watch the news at night, things can be doom and gloom, and things are pretty tough. We live in a weird environment now, not just since before the pandemic, but then during the pandemic, and now as we're kind of getting out of it, there's still a lot of bad things out there. So Frank was kind enough to help me organize some things and give me some ideas so we could do our story last fall, and I was so proud of the story that we did. I was hoping to enter it for an Emmy Award consideration, but we had some issues behind the scenes, so we're going to try to do it again next year, so at least some of my journalistic peers can take a look at it. I was really, really proud of it. Frank was asking me to talk a little bit my spiritual journey and my spiritual experience. Obviously, I'm a Catholic. I was baptized in Pittsburgh when I was a little baby. I was actually, ironically, I was in Pittsburgh last week. I was attending a conference, and then I took a few extra days to visit some family and friends up there, and then I stopped by St. Philip Catholic Church, where I was baptized as a baby, and it was just so nice to be back there and to see the church that I attended when I was just a little kid. I have vague memories of it, but Mom and Dad definitely have fond memories of it. Little known fact, a very famous, now Hall of Fame former coach attended that church, Bill Cowher from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dad remembers the Cowher family when they went to St. Philip. Of course, they were just a regular blue-collar family in that area of Pittsburgh, and then of course things changed, and Bill went on and did all sorts of things and became a hero in Pittsburgh. So it was nice to be back in my hometown. My Catholic faith has really helped me a lot with my career and with even just my life journey. I don't think I would be doing TV news if it wasn't for the education that I had at Catholic school. I attended a really good Catholic school in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, went there from kindergarten to 8th grade, and then I went to a really good public high school in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. But it was Sister Margaret in the 7th grade that told me something that I kept tucked away, and it really helped me on my path. And I forget the context of the class that we had, but she had told us, she said, it's a sin if you don't use the talents that God gave you. And I kept that tucked away. And several years later, when I was in college at Bethany, one of the summer jobs I had was being a letter carrier. I worked for the post office. And it was a great job. I really, really enjoyed it because I got to see society function. I got to see the bankers. I got to see the steel workers. I got to see the plumbers. I got to see the road workers, and I got to see the attorneys at the courthouse and at the lawyers' offices. I got to see the doctors at the universities in Pittsburgh. It's just an eye-opening experience. And there was an African-American supervisor at the post office that took a liking to me. And he knew that I was interested in broadcasting and journalism, and I was working at the post office so I could help pay bills for college and everything. And he had offered to help me get a job within the Postal Service and to have a career because he had spent many years there. And I honestly, seriously considered working at the post office. And Mr. Hill, real nice man, said he would do whatever he could to help me. And I thought it might be, I thought maybe God was trying to lead me in that path because I didn't really want to leave Pittsburgh. I really liked it there. All my family was there. It was a great place to live. I considered it my main area. We didn't have that much time. Lived in the suburbs. All my cousins and aunts and uncles were there, and grandparents and everything. But I kept tucked away what Sister Margaret said. It's a sin if you don't use the talents that God gave you. And I thought that writing and presentation skills and journalism, I really enjoyed that, and I was concerned that I might get in trouble with the good Lord someday if I ended up taking a good job at the post office but not utilizing the skills and the gifts that the good Lord had given me. So I ended up leaving the post office, and I ended up taking a job in radio in Wheeling, West Virginia, and that led to a TV job in Steubenville, Ohio, and then 29 years later, I'm in Charleston. And that's it's a really good thing. I'm really glad that I had that this path. But again, it goes back to Sister Margaret saying, I want you to concentrate on what you have, the talents and the gifts that you have, and focus on that. And it's nice to have that Catholic background too, because it helps me navigate a lot of the pitfalls that I cover and the stories that we cover every day, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the church shooting at Mother Emanuel downtown, or all sorts of bad things that we happen along the way that we cover, but also the good things too. And it's nice to be able to cover positive stories like the working of the St. John Cemetery and putting a memorial there and having a reflection area. I think that there's a need and a thirst for that, because I think people need to be reassured that there are good things happening in the community. And I'm fortunate that my bosses really try to give us the opportunity to report those stories. I didn't know if I was going to stick around in TV, and again, that's where my faith kicked in. Back in 2012, I was telling my friends at my lunch table here, I moved here in 2004, and I originally went to Channel 5. Started there as the weekend anchor, and then I became the morning anchor, and I really enjoyed it. I anchored mornings I was at 5 for 8.5 years, and then anchored mornings for about 7. So when that 2 a.m. wake-up call comes, it's like, oh boy. I know God's listening because there's nothing around, and it's just me and my cat waking up at 2 a.m. and saying my morning prayers before I head into the newsroom. But I was there for, like I said, 8.5 years, and then in 2011, 2012, big changes happened. We ended up getting a new management that came into Channel 5, and one day he came in, the news director came in and decided he just didn't like me, and my contract wasn't being renewed, so I was going to be out of a job. And at that same time, I was dating a girl that I really wanted to marry, thought she was the one. Well, then she decided that I wasn't the one. So she broke up with me. So in about 6 months, I found out I was going to be losing my job, and the girl I wanted to marry broke up with me. And then my beloved cat died. So in that year, all those things happened, and I'm just saying, God, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I'll do whatever you want. If you want me to collect trash, I will. If you want me to work at a restaurant, get into hospitality, go back to Pittsburgh, be a steel worker, I'll do whatever you want, but you gotta give me some guidance, because I just don't know. Working in TV news, that's the only thing I really wanted to do, TV and radio. And at that point, I'd done it for 20-some years, and I was open to anything. I told God I'd do whatever He wanted me to do, and He helped me navigate some things. I ended up getting a job at Benefit Focus. I was working for a software company on Daniel Island, and even though it wasn't a good fit, it was still a good experience, because I worked with some really, really cool young people that are way smarter than me, tech savvy and younger. I guess you could call them Gen Xers. I'm not sure what the category is, but they were super cool, and I became good friends with them. And even though I liked the company, I just didn't know if it was going to be the right fit for me. Well, then fast forward a little bit, maybe 8 months, 9 months, something like that, and Channel 4 called me, and they were in a pinch. They said, Bill, can you help us out? We're short-staffed. Can you do some freelance news reporting for us? I said, sure, I'll go. And so I went to Channel 4 it was July of 2013, and ended up being really, really a good situation. I did some work with them occasionally every other weekend or so at work. So I was working about 7 days a week, Monday through Friday at Benefit Focus, and then working weekends at Channel 4. So those were long weeks, but again, I just left up to the Lord. I said He wants me to hit the reset on my life, and so that's what I was doing. I was just plowing through, and then that ended up leading to a full-time job at WCIV, and I ended up starting on December 1st of 2013, and I've been there ever since. He hasn't kicked me out, or Channel 4 hasn't kicked me out, and that led to the promotion at Fox, because Fox 24 doesn't have its own news department. They contract Channel 4 to provide their news for them. So I still go to Channel 4 every day, except you see me mostly on the air at Fox 24. And occasionally they'll take me off the bench and put me on Channel 4 in case someone's sick or someone on vacation, so I help out there. But it's been a really good, it's been a good path. I thank the good Lord for all the blessings that I have, and there have certainly been a lot of ups and downs through the years. Working as an anchor in Texas, I was in Austin for a little while, and wow, what an experience. I was anchoring the news in the capital city, a party city like Austin, having a great time. And then Mom called me in Pittsburgh to say that she had breast cancer. So here I am across the city, or across the country, halfway across the country, and Mom and Dad were dealing with all this kind of by themselves, even though they had family there. But my brother at the time was in California, and I was in Texas. So again, that's where I relied on my faith, and then it brought me back to Florence, where I'd once worked. One of my old bosses hired me back at Channel 13 in Florence, and then that took me to Myrtle Beach, and then I eventually went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and then moved here in 2004. And through that path, I attended Mass and went to different churches, and when I was at Blessed Sacrament, there was a sermon that Father Hanley gave, and it was similar to a sermon that my pastor at Our Lady of Grace in Greensboro had given. And the sermon was basically that God puts three types of people on earth. Those that are meant to be married, those that are meant to be in the religious life, and those that are meant to be single. And I kind of kept that tucked away. And when I went through that really bad breakup a few years ago, I remember recalling Father Hanley's sermon, and then my pastor back in Greensboro at Our Lady of Grace, and I thought to myself, well, I think things are going to be okay. Life could be worse. I was telling these gentlemen here, my house is almost paid off. I have no debt. And I see my friends at the TV station going on their dates, and some of them are married, some of them are happy, some of them aren't married, and some of them are married but aren't happy. And I count my blessings that I have a really good life and a good foundation, and I just steer my energies and my interests to positive things in my life, like coming to groups like this and trying to do positive stories, and going to Mass, and trying to do good things in the community. Doesn't make me perfect. I make mistakes. I got pulled over for speeding a couple years ago. Rounded up, okay, I did it. I was pushing the limit, and I got caught. But I'm certainly not perfect. I think sometimes people think, I don't know if it's just Catholics in general, but churchgoers in general. Some people think that oh, you must be a churchgoer, so you must think that you're better than everyone else. And for me, that's totally not the case. I go to church because I'm not perfect. If I was perfect, then I wouldn't be going. But I need to go and get that little boost of confidence and that boost of love from Him, and to continue on the path that He wants me to follow. I like where I live. I like where I work. I'm really blessed to have really good bosses and managers, and our corporate folks are really supportive of me too. But if something happens down the line and my contract doesn't get renewed again, which I don't know if it will, but I hope it does. But if it doesn't, I know things are going to be okay, because I know that He's looking out for me, and He's going to take me to wherever He wants. I hope it's here in Charleston. Mom and Dad retired here back in 2015, and they wanted to escape the cold and the winters of Pittsburgh, and they like it here. My brother escaped the craziness of California, so now he's here in Charleston, and that's a story in itself. But he enjoys it here too. And it's nice to call Charleston my new home. Pittsburgh's my hometown, and my roots are there, but this is my home, and it's great to have a good community of Catholics here like we do. I was talking to this gentleman right here. We were talking about St. Clair of Assisi. There's another great connection that I told my mom about, and she was all excited. You might find this interesting too. My mom went to an all-girl Catholic high school outside of Pittsburgh, St. Francis of Academy. It closed, I think, in the early 90s, and Mom was active with their alumni association. The Diocese of Pittsburgh eventually sold the property. It was a beautiful piece of property in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, and they're turning it into, I think, assisted care living there. Well, the chapel that was on that property, they saved the stained glass windows. Apparently, I don't recall, Mom says those stained glass windows were just absolutely beautiful. Well, now those stained glass windows are going to be installed at the new St. Clair of Assisi Church on Daniel Island. So when I told Mom about it, she of course was thrilled and called her lady friends and her church friends back in Pittsburgh. So we have a little bit of Catholicism from Pittsburgh moving its way down here to Daniel Island, so we can continue to live on and serve a new generation of parishioners here for many years to come. Talked to Father West about it, and he was all excited. He was excited because of the deal that he scored on it. Of course, I was excited because we've got a family connection to it, so we were sharing our excitement about being able to share some precious relics from the chapel at St. Francis Academy.
You should do a story on that.
We did.
Oh,
We did do a story about it, and I mentioned it, and I forget when it was. It was several months ago. Unfortunately, Father West, I think, was out of the country, but we did do, I think, a Zoom interview with him and got some information from him. And we got the crane that was lowering in some other steel beams there. I think they were lowering the, I don't know if it's a bell tower or a spire, but something important was happening there, so we did do an update. But I know we'll do another story once those windows are finally installed and the church is ready to go, ready to open their new parish. So. But that's kind of my story. If you have any questions, if I can help out in some way, please let me know. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Working in the media, I take a lot of heat, sometimes for good reasons. We're not perfect. But I can assure you that I've got really good bosses, and we try to do the best we can to make sure we think out our stories, and we try to be as fair and impartial as possible. And we try to be fair when it comes to sensitive topics, whether it's with the Catholic Church or a church in general. We want to make sure that we're fair and impartial. And sometimes for the most part, I think we do a really good job, but occasionally we may miss it, and maybe we're overlooking something. And if we do that, I've gone to my boss before, and she will always back me up, and we will do either a follow-up story or do a correction, just to let people know that we're trying to be honest and fair and upfront with it, because that's our goal.
Thank you for a great talk. What would you say are the top several issues, either on a faith basis or just general issue in Charleston?
That's a good question, Don. I know that I've seen before that church attendance is down in many faiths, and I think that's one. Another one that may not go as reported, and that has to do, I think, with church safety. I know at Blessed Sacrament, ever since the church shooting, we have a Charleston City police officer parked outside of church at least Sundays. Normally I go to the 11 a.m. Mass on Sundays, and I presume the other Masses have it too, but now we've got cameras set up, and we've got a police officer there during every Mass. So I think that's one issue. I think those are two issues that we keep an eye on. The safety, there's another one also. Well, I know the Catholic Church, the issues regarding the pedophilia and the things that were happening with the priests, that's calmed down a bit, but we still keep an eye on things in case there are lawsuits that crop up. We want to make sure that we're on top of those, and make sure we report them as accurately and fairly as possible.
Thank you.
Sure. Is there any internal conversations with your colleagues about the way certain issues, the verbiage chosen? For example, they don't say pro-life, they always call us anti-abortion. Or the recent new thing I've seen was they're talking about the chemical abortion pills, and rather than saying you can use this up until the 10 weeks, they just use this term, they call it non-viable pregnancies. So that makes it sound like this is a non-viable pregnancy. Well, or they're doing it on a sick pregnancy. But I was like, oh, so now we're gonna call all pregnancy non-viable pregnancies. Well, we're all non-viable until 21 weeks, 20. So how do you handle those things professionally, and is there a discussion, and do you have any input on those things?
We do, and as God is my witness, we do have serious discussions like this in the newsroom, and a lot of times we're guided by the protocol set forth by Associated Press. And so a lot of times we'll follow what Associated Press deems is the appropriate terminology. They kind of guide us with verbiage and with just simple punctuation and pronunciation and things like that. But like you were raising regarding the abortion issue, we do talk about that. Sometimes it comes from the network, and so if you see a story on a local newscast regarding that, it might come from either ABC or Fox. But if we're doing a local story, I think we try to do a better job of saying pro-life and using terms that may not be as gray as what you were describing. But we do the best we can with that. It is tricky, but we want to make sure that we're fair.
I'm just gonna jump in with a quick question because you kind of, you framed it here, and that is kind of the delineation between the national news media and local news media. It seems to some observers that the national news media is increasingly ill-equipped to fully understand, you know, Catholic or Christian or faith communities generally, because they've become, you know, secularized or detached. Do you see that there's a better understanding in local media than the national media?
I think so, and I've always said for a long time, and granted I'm saying it because it's my bread and butter, because it's how I get paid, but I also honestly believe it. If you don't like the national media, I totally get it. I don't understand what they do sometimes. I know I've met, and I know a couple of people on the network level whom I know personally, and I genuinely trust. Like I worked with, for a few years in Austin, Texas, I worked with, I think his title is congressional correspondent, but it's Mike Emanuel from Fox News Channel. I know Mike's really good. Mike's down the line, down the line. He's not gonna take a side. I've met a couple other correspondents along the way too, whom I greatly respect. But it is tough. I mean, the network newscast, they really put us in a pickle because the local folks like us, and I don't want to speak for Channel 5, and I don't want to speak for Channel 2, although I worked briefly, I worked for a while, as you know, at Channel 5. I suspect that they want to do the same thing and be as judicial as possible and make sure that they understand the issues that affect us here locally. And all those newsrooms, they have Catholics that work there too. I'm friends with them. I know them very well. You know, I'm friends with Bill Walsh at Channel 5, and I know Carolyn Murray over at Channel 2, and there are other Catholics in their newsrooms too. And I know they help guide the newsroom discussion about the issues and about the terms and about the issues that face, whether it's abortion or the Catholic Church or any other denomination.
Really formulated how I'm gonna ask this, but having children that are of age to go, or starting to go to college, or want to start college, and I saw a statistic on determining your roommates, and they use these stats from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up, about questions that they would ask to find out who their roommate was gonna be. One of the questions was about politics, and if they would move in with somebody who voted for a different president than they voted for. And this year, it was something like 70% said no. It was an unusually high statistic. And I'm trying to figure out how media, and it's not just cable news, but social media and all of the media sources are influencing our children's lives to feel like that matters so much that they can't just be themselves, you know? And I'm trying to figure out how the media could play a role in maybe correcting that.
That's a very good point, and that's why when people talk to me about the media, and I can take the heat. I know the issues that I'm in the media, so if you have a concern, if you don't like something, by all means, talk to me about it, and chances are I'll agree with you 9 times out of 10. I'm not sure how we, at least locally, can address something like that other than just making sure that we're aware of the stories that we cover when it comes that parents are facing, the issues that parents face. I do remember that statistic that you cited. It was crazy. But I also tell people also, if you don't like the network newscast and if you don't like the cable newscast, it's okay to turn them off. One of the reasons why I do Fox 24 launched the 6:30 p.m. news was because we're going up against the network newscasts and at CBS, NBC, and ABC. And you know, I watch them from time to time just to see how their coverage is, and it's painful to watch because I can't watch it because it's just very it's either one-sided or they're not telling the full story. And I just can't watch it, and so that's one of the reasons why my bosses at Fox 24 launched the 6:30 news, was that we can give local news and also give the national headlines of the day in a fair and impartial manner, and also to give viewers something else to watch at that time period, because Charleston is becoming more of a shift town. We've got Bosch, we've got Volvo, we've got Mercedes, and so a lot of people are stuck in traffic. They're not home to catch the 6 o'clock news, but they can get the local issues and the local stories and the local weather at 6:30. But I do certainly see your point regarding that study, and any, the social media aspect, it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I don't like to do it, but it's part of my job. My boss wants us to do social media so we can reach out to people and maybe either tweet or post a story on Facebook about something that we're covering with the hopes that they'll tune in to our 5 o'clock news on Channel 4 or the 10 o'clock news on Fox 24. So I see my boss's reasoning for that, but I try to spend as little time as possible on social media because it just gets to be too much.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Oh, sure.
So, you just, to build on that question, it does seem like since when I was a child, news was more boring. You know, you got your information, and it was sort of an intellectual pursuit to watch the news at night. And now it does seem like it's going after viewership, ratings, almost like, you know, one of my rules of thumbs if I'm on social media, and I try to follow it, but if something gets you kind of angry, or, you know, there's a purpose, it's trying to do that in order to get the ratings, or get the attention, or get the like, or get the something. So can you speak to that a little bit on how the news has changed in that way, and it really isn't good for our society?
Yeah, I think the main reason for that, well, it's a couple of things. I think the technology has changed, so we can do more bells and whistles and do the whiz-bang graphics and flashy things to get your attention. But the other most important thing is the viewership measurement. And that's how Nielsen captures and determines how many people are watching a newscast at a certain time. Before, for many years, Nielsen would send out diaries to random viewers. And so people would tune in, they would write a diary, they were supposed to write in their diary, I watch Fox 24 at 10 o'clock. But a lot of times, that diary method was not very reliable. Maybe sometimes people would get confused. They might think they were watching Fox 24, where indeed they were maybe watching Channel 2. And so it wasn't the most accurate thing in the world, but that's just the way it was. Well, then several years ago, I guess it was in the mid-90s maybe, Nielsen started electronic viewership measurement. And they would put boxes on random viewers in a certain TV market, and those boxes would determine what channel was on, and that was very accurate. And what they do is, a TV station will get credit for having viewers tuned in up until a quarter hour. So we do it here in Charleston. It's done, they do it a little slightly differently up north in the larger markets like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and New York. But we try to have the weather timed out, because the weather is one of the #1 reasons people tune in. We try to have the weather at certain times during the hours so that we can get the credit for people tuning in. So if we do the weather at, let's say, 20 minutes past the hour, and viewers click off as soon as Dave Williams is done doing the weather, then Nielsen takes us as having, we get the credit for the full half hour then. So even though you've tuned out at 6:22, Nielsen says, oh, you've watched for the half hour, even though technically we still have sports and maybe a little lighthearted feature at the end of the news. So the viewership measurement determines a lot of how we do that and getting the viewers' attention. A lot of times we will start the newscast with eye capturing, with an incredible piece of video, like an alligator ringing a doorbell in Grand Oaks. That happened in my mom and dad's neighborhood last year. A doorbell came, we caught the alligator. Oh my God, I put it on my social media, on my Fox 24 Facebook page. Oh my God, people went crazy on that. Of course we're gonna put it in a newscast.
Alligator train.
It is what it is. But I certainly see your point. That's kind of the reason why we do that, is to capture viewers, and to get their attention so we can tune in, to keep them for the full half hour, so we can credit. So a lot of it has to do with ratings, for better or for worse.
I had a question, it was a little bit different subject, just curious what a normal day's like. So when you know, because, and I'm guessing it changes a little bit depending on what's going on, but if you're going into work for a normal day, how does that evolve to where you then put the newscast together when you come on?
Sure.
6:30?
My shift is 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. And when I get to work, I try to get to work by about 1:45 so I can get my computer up and running and check my emails and figure out what's going on. And then I meet at 2:30 with my producers and a couple of the reporters that might be in the building, and we discuss the stories of the day that we're covering, and then we discuss what the news story will be for either 6:30 or especially for the 10 o'clock news on Fox and the 11 o'clock news on ABC. So we have meetings behind the scenes. Usually it's about 15 minutes or so. And then, but each day can be different. If there's breaking news, a house fire or a shooting or something like that, that changes the whole plan. It gets thrown out the door, and then we're worried about what that breaking news story is. So we focus on that. And so that's typically what the day is, although some days, I'm trying to get out in the field to cover more stories. Back in April, I had a really good sit-down interview with the new bishop. And so that was new for me. I changed my schedule that day so I could have a nice sit-down interview with the bishop, whom I really like. I had a really nice talk with him. I think he's gonna do a really good job for us. And in the day, last year when I did the story with Frank, I rearranged my schedule so I could go down to the cemetery in downtown and get some video of that. And the nice lady, I forget her name, but we met her at the library where she was doing her research on the cemetery and the graves and the names of the people that were buried there. But when I'm out in the field, that's what I do. But on a day-to-day basis, like what I'm kind of doing right now, I typically go in at 2 p.m. and I meet with people behind the scenes. We figure out the top stories of the day. We tweak a few things depending on what happens, whether it's locally or nationally, and then we all work together, roll up our sleeves, and write the stories in for the newscasting. I write some stories. I can't write all of them, but I do write some stories. It's a team effort between the reporters, the producers, and the authors.
All right, I know I can't count, but one last question.
Oh, it's okay. I like it.
I sense that when you talk about 2011, about that point of struggle in your life, I sense that you had a special encounter with Jesus Christ. Can you tell us a little bit deeper on what you sensed there and how that shaped your spiritual life in that moment?
I think the best way to describe that was just to, it was a very empty time of my life because my mom and dad hadn't moved here at that point. My brother had not moved here from California at that point. So, and even though I've got a really nice circle of friends here, there was still a lot of emptiness because I had lost my job, and I think at that point I was working at Benefit Focus, and I was no longer in that relationship with that girl, and so there was a lot of heartache. In fact, I had gone to the doctor because I had lost a lot of weight. The doctor had diagnosed me with depression, but she was wonderful, and she said, "We're going to get you on track. You're going to be fine." She put me on a medicine for about a year or so, and then weaned me off the medicine, and I'm stronger now than I was before. But the one thing I would do at night before I'd go to bed was sit in my big fluffy chair, and didn't have my cat anymore to sit on my lap, but I'd sit in that chair in my living room, I'd turn the TV off, and I'd pray or just kind of reflect on the day. And I remember one night, I think it was in the winter time because it was kind of chilly, I just remember a sense of peace that overcame me that night. And this was after several months of struggle between the depression and the job search and the heartbreak and everything else. I just remember feeling that sense of peace. I don't know how to describe it, it was just a sense of peace. And after that, I went to bed and I woke up the next morning. It was like I turned the page on that dark chapter of my life, and I was starting the next chapter, which was a much brighter one. And I never looked back. I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that it was just like, whew, it's like he took the weight off me. Things are going to get better. I just have to take it day by day, and that's kind of how it was.
Bill, that's a beautiful witness. Thank you so much.